Hello, everyone. All right, good to see
Hey,
everyone. Jeremy, Beach, Mike, Braden, everyone. Good to be here with you all. We're going to go ahead and kick off the webinar for today. So bear with me for 1 second as we get things loaded. All right, can everyone see my presentation? I like to confirm this kind of right in the beginning. Sometimes I've missed it. Can I get a thumbs up? Thumbs up from folks. All right. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another West Virginia Outdoor Economy webinar series. I'm really excited to be here with you all today. Conservation as catalysts. Conservation is critical for the outdoor economy in any space, and the land in which we recreate on has to be protected. And that's what today is all about. It's that foundational piece that really launches the rest of the outdoor economy. I'm your host, Corey Lilly. I'm the Outdoor Community Development Manager for the Brad and Lee Smith Outdoor Economic Development Collaborative. And we're based in the Provost office at WVU. And we support our communities across the state. Our purpose is to address population loss in the state of West Virginia. There's been a continuous drop in population for quite some time, and so that's why we're here. And we do that by empowering our West Virginia's communities and partners to advance the state's economy and enhance quality of life through outdoor recreation. We firmly believe that outdoor recreation in West Virginia's outdoors is our sustainable competitive advantage for why talent wants to move to different places. Why should they choose West Virginia? Well, if they love outdoor recreation in the outdoors, then West Virginia is a place for them to call home. We do that through two different channels. We have our Ascend West Virginia, our talent attraction and retention team, where we have an incentive program to relocate remote workers to the state of West Virginia, or if you're a recent graduate of WVU or Marshall, we help you join the remote workforce here in West Virginia and keep our best talent here in the state. And then on our other side of the house, the outdoor economy side, where this program lives, is where I work and where we host quite a few other different programs that we launch across the state. So some of those is our trail training education. We have infrastructure development, outdoor business development, grants and research. So if any of these are of interest to you, this is some of our programs that we have. Particularly right now, that's traveling across the state of West Virginia. One of those is our Trail Training and Education Center, led by our infrastructure development team, where we actually have a mobile trails lab that moves across the state to different parks and trail systems, and we teach different courses. This is a few photos of what it looks like out in the field. If you want to learn about rock armoring or rigging or just sustainable trail building 101, or what does it mean to convene a group of volunteers and how do you do that safely, those are all skills taught in these courses, and we'd love to have you at one of the courses across the state. Those are being deployed right now. I'll drop a link in the chat in just a second. But something that I would love for you all to do, everyone on the call today, if you wouldn't mind in the chat dropping your name and the organization that you're with, and why outdoor recreation. What's something that gets you fired up about outdoor recreation? Some of our other upcoming webinars that we have a series of business webinars for outdoor businesses. So, marketing to the modern outdoor traveler. That's a presentation led by Digital Relativity. We have some economic benefits of gravel cycling, preparing in advance of an injury. That's gravel insurance, the big insurance question, and then grant readiness. Those are just a few that we have in the hopper, and we have many more that we have planned throughout the rest of 2026. I'll also drop a link to some of these future webinars in the chat. We're scheduling out some new outdoor community meetups that'll be across the state of West Virginia. If you'd like to have one of these come to your community, please reach out. We get all of our outdoor nonprofits in a region together and highlight some of the amazing work that's taking place. Right now, also traveling across the state is Heidi, who's actually on our call today. We have a roadshow taking place, learning from the businesses on the ground doing the work in West Virginia and what are their challenges that they're faced with in the state, and how can we convene an outdoor industry alliance, and what might that look like, and what are some of the things that we want to tackle in that alliance. If you want to learn more about what's happening at across West Virginia's outdoor economy, this is the best source of information that we share out. It's our Send newsletter. Through this, you'll get updates about all the upcoming webinars, all the upcoming trainings, any business development offerings that we have, everything, and then other curated content of what's happening with partners across the state and the amazing work that they are leading. But I'm really excited to now turn it over to Brent Bailey and Adam Webster of the West Virginia Land Trust to talk about conservation in West Virginia and why is it so important in the outdoor economy. So with that, I'll stop sharing and pass it over to Brent and Adam. Thanks so much for being here, y'all.
Hey, thanks a lot. We're glad to be here. This is a great opportunity. I'd like to reiterate what Corey said. I want to be sure that what we talk about today addresses or can be framed in whatever kind of interests you have specifically. If you're with a municipality or with a county or with a nonprofit organization or a volunteer group, or it would be good to know what your interest or your foundation for coming here is, so that we can make sure that we gear our comments toward your interests. We're going to have plenty of time for questions if you want, and we can do that in the middle if something comes up. If you want to put a question into the chat, then Corey can monitor that and break in when somebody stops for a breath. So anyway, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being here, and I'm really glad to be doing this with Adam Webster. Adam is our Director of Stewardship. That means that he really oversees the activities on all of our lands. We've had more than 80 transactions around the state. We've had projects in more than half the counties in the state. We have 10 public preserves that are open. We have about between 35 and 40 private agreements, conservation easements with landowners who are conserving their property, although they continue to own it, but they have agreed to certain restrictions. And so we've conserved land in a variety of ways, and we'll talk more about that as we move through. But I think that in terms of the outdoor economy and in terms of recreation, our main point really is that protecting the land is sort of the foundation on which other things begin to build. If you haven't protected land permanently, then assets that people are accustomed to using can go away. We've seen this happen in a lot of communities. It's happened in Davis at what became our Yellow Creek Natural Area. It happened in Oak Hill with what became our Needleseye Preserve, which is now owned by Oak Hill. It's happened in a variety of places, and so often people might use corporate land, for instance, and they've built trails and they've enjoyed going there, and they sort of, they don't pay attention necessarily. You don't think of, well, who owns this land and could it go away? And then suddenly one day it does go away. The company that owns it decides they're going to log it and they need to close down trails, or they decide they're going to sell the property, or they're going to carve off certain parts where trails exist and going to sell them to private individuals, and the public's access to that becomes often eliminated. So what we do, though, is as a land trust, we protect land permanently. And
Hey Brent,
yeah,
I'm gonna pop up that image real quick
alrighty.
so that it's there, just so you have it. Can everybody see that the presentation, or no? All right, give me 1 second.
There we go. Now it's popped up.
Thank
Coming
you.
on.
Sorry, Brent.
That's all right.
There we go.
So we protect land permanently, and once it's secured, then all kinds of good things can flow from that. But that's a little bit of our mantra. Is it starts with the land. You identify the places where you see assets, whether it's to protect wildlife or protect water or protect recreational opportunities or all of the above. You have to identify what lands need to be protected and figure out a way to get them into permanent protection. And that's really what we do at the Land Trust. So, Adam, you want to move forward?
There we go.
Yeah. Um, land trusts nationwide are conservation land protection organizations. There aren't that many in West Virginia. There are about 1,200 across the country. But their role is to effect conservation on the ground and then working with partners to plan and build on the opportunities for that. So we support the state's outdoor economy because we enable recreation and tourism and community identity. We're enablers in a good sense. And once we have protected a piece of land, we really welcome partnerships with local municipalities and volunteer groups and other nonprofits to manage and oversee those properties that we have protected for the long term. So we are the bridge really between first protecting that land and then ultimately the recreation planning that happens on those properties. Um, and in other cases, we also find that uh, conservation and development do go hand in hand. When you have conserved land and you have an asset in a community that people love, they want to go to, those conservation lands increase quality of life, they increase property values, they help to retain young professionals, they attract remote workers, like the Ascend program that Corey mentioned, and it attracts business investment into a community. So protecting land that serves a public purpose has a lot of ripple effects. And that's one of the things that we evaluate when we're looking at a property and trying to decide which of the opportunities we're going to pursue. We do have more opportunities than we're able to take on because this has really caught on. But again, it being as it starts with the land. And you build that base where conservation really is the infrastructure for the economic development and a lot of the community benefits that will flow from that. So that's really where we play into the outdoor economy.
Go. Yeah, I would just
So
re I would reiterate real quick what Brent said earlier that like it's that permanent access. Brent mentioned earlier that I'm sure everyone on this call has experienced a property, maybe in your neighborhood or wherever, that everybody used for years, right? And then all of a sudden you can't use it. So it's that permanence that I think the land trust brings to the table.
yeah, yeah. And in fact, well, I'll mention that in just a second. This slide about land trusts in the U.S. Um, land trusts are not really well known in West Virginia. There are about five that are operating in the state. West Virginia Land Trust is the only one that operates statewide. That's why we have been active in more than half the counties in the state, and we're chipping away at some point. We'd love to say 55 projects that have happened, at least one in every county in the state. But land trusts are pretty common in other states where they've had, a longer presence. Um, there's been more land that's been protected by land trusts in the United States than are protected in national parks. And we're a little bit under the radar. It's not certainly not the whole National Park Service with rangers and people in funny uniforms. Many land trust lands are simply available and protected for passive participation, passive use. But we do use a variety of tools to protect land. You can see at the bottom of that slide, conservation easements, fee acquisitions, life estates, bequests, and rights of way. We also provide technical support as tools to protect land. So just real quickly, a conservation easement is a private agreement, voluntary agreement with a private landowner who voluntarily wants to give up some form of development rights on their property. They may decide that a farmer may decide that he or she wants their land to always be agricultural, and they will give up the development rights so that that property will never become housing or paved over. They want it to be agricultural, and we can put an agricultural easement, which restricts the use of that property to agricultural purposes for the long term. We have a conservation easement on the Needleseye Boulder Park in Oak Hill, where we bought the property from a timber company that was liquidating some of their assets. And When we bought it, the city of Oak Hill said, we'd love to develop this into a climbing site for the bouldering that's there. And we said, well, that's fine. And they said, could we own the property? And we said, yes, but we will place a conservation easement on the property, which says that this land can only ever be used for recreation purposes. And if at some point the city of Oak Hill, the city council, were to decide, well, we don't really want to do that recreation site anymore, then there's a reversion clause which says that land will come back to us. So this is a way for us to lock in permanent use for recreation purposes. And the reality is that at the local level, politics change and city councils change and county commissions change. And a group that's acting today on behalf of conservation and recreation may not be the group that you have in 5 years. Those turn over. But with these conservation easement agreements, then that makes permanent the purpose that that land is supposed to serve and the benefits that are supposed to be derived from it. Fee acquisitions means that we own the property outright. So all the rights that are available, we may not always own the mineral rights, but it does mean that we own the surface and how it is going to be used. Life estates come to us. Somebody will put a piece of property in a will, and oh, I'm sorry. Life estate is when someone decides that they want to donate the land to the West Virginia Land Trust, but they want to remain on the land and be able to use it for the remainder of their lives. And so this is where they give up the land but retain occupancy rights. And upon their passing, then the land fully is vested in the land trust. Bequests is where properties come to us in wills. Rights of way may be just a small, short corridor that will allow us to move from one point to another across private land. We will often negotiate agreements with private landowners who will allow us to put a trail so that you can get access to a river put in, or a put in or a takeout, or between two pieces of protected land. And we've done this on a variety of properties where landowners have said, sure, I'll let people go across this narrow corridor. Please put up signs that say they're supposed to stay on the trails, but I don't mind people using my property to go across and connect point A to point B. So we do work with private landowners to do rights of way also.
Yeah, real quick, I'll add with the private landowners and conservation easements, I think one of the points of uh, topics in this webinar is practical pointers. So there are tax incentives for private landowners to enter into this agreement with the land trust. So, there's a little bit of an incentive. We have a state tax incentive, or we have a federal tax incentive in West Virginia. We don't have the state tax incentive. Other states have both mechanisms, but landowners are able to get a federal tax benefit. And then just real quick about ownership. Brent mentioned the fee ownership. That's when the land trust owns properties. But even when we own a property, depending on how we get it, in the deed there may be some sort of mechanism that if the land trust even ceases to exist, that property may go to another conservation entity, whether that's like the Forest Service, National Park Service, and we'll talk about Needleseye in a little bit, but the outdoor West Virginia has one real core funding mechanism for conservation land protection. That's the Outdoor Heritage Conservation Fund. And in their agreements, when we get funding from them, they have, I guess technically it's a reversion clause, right, Brent? That
Mhm. Yeah.
essentially, if the land trust ceases to exist, that the land would go back to that state entity, which is the Outdoor Heritage Conservation Fund. So there is permanence even in us owning property, in the fact that there are some reversion clauses and deed restrictions that we have on ourselves to make sure that land stays in conservation or recreation or whatever purpose it may be, in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of these tools, the easements, the fee acquisitions, the others too, are what we bring to the table to create permanent protection and to create long-term certainty on how property will be available for a variety of public benefits.
Yep, I'll go to the next slide. I just want to point
Yeah.
out real quick, just for interest, since, um, uh-oh, wrong way. Just real quick, that picture is our Tom's Run Preserve, just south of Morgantown. So that's what that photo is. And then we'll go to the West Virginia Land Trust. That's us. That's our crew. This is at our Jones Preserve in Doddridge County. And as Brent mentioned, we're statewide. We work with public and private, and I believe I think I was going to have one more comment in there, Brent. I think I put up a different version. And we also work, we have some sites that we preserve commercial access. Um, so Jenkinsburg, that's for commercial outfitters to access. So we have some business sort of perspectives there. We are now at 62,000 acres. We have 10 public preserves opened at various levels. Some of our preserves are lesser managed than others. We have partnerships with various groups. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but WVU being a partner, City of Beckley being a partner, all sorts of nonprofit partners. I'll wait till future slides for that. And we protect land for a lot of different reasons. We consider recreation a conservation value. So one of our early analysis that we do when we first look at a property is we look at its conservation values, and we rank those values. And recreation is a conservation value. And oftentimes recreation comes on top of other values. So you can see there that it says that we protect land or we conserve land for stacked benefits. And what we mean by that is that we may protect it for recreation, but we may be also protecting sensitive habitat. In that area we may have a stream in there, so we're protecting the stream, and that stream may be in a drinking water protection area for a municipality. So you can start to stack benefits, and stacking those benefits, it's more attractive to funders. You get more bang for your buck. And that's really how we like to do it. We are conservationists at heart. I have a wildlife degree. Brent has a wildlife background. A lot of us have like biology, ecology backgrounds. So we get the habitat and the wildlife. We have examples of where we have endangered species, and we also have hiking trails and recreation. So we try to balance that the best we can. And we are accredited through the Land Trust Accreditation Commission. That just basically means that we have a set of criteria. It's the gold standard, I guess you could say, of land trusts. We have to meet a certain set of criteria in due diligence when we do a transaction. And that's to ensure the permanence, really, that Brent was talking about earlier. It ensures permanence. It ensures just a long-term legal defense of the conservation values.
Mhm. Yeah. One other thing that is a byproduct, although it certainly appeals to us when we're looking at a property, is that there are some properties also that are important to a community identity. And so when we're looking at what are the conservation values, we have found often that there are iconic places in communities that people want to see protected. One good example of this is a few years ago, a property within the viewshed of the Bickle Knob Tower outside of Elkins was being put up for sale by a timber company. And it was likely that some of that property was going to be purchased and converted to housing. And the view from the tower is one that people always go up to enjoy right outside of Elkins. And so we went to the auction. It was a sealed bid auction, and we were able to be the high bidder on the property, and we secured that view shed. And people were really grateful that what they had grown up with and what they've known for generations is still going to be standing there, and is going to be forested. Camp Bartow in Pocahontas County is an historic Civil War battlefield site. Many people who live in Pocahontas County have the same surnames as the soldiers who fought in the Battle of the Greenbrier River in 1861. That battle ultimately helped to define some of the division between Virginia and West Virginia, between North and South. And it's a really important place. It's appreciated at the local level, and it is sort of an iconic place for people who appreciate not just their local history, but their own family's history. And Yellow Creek and Moon Rocks, again, are in Tucker County, are places where people know this iconic landscape. And it's a place where mountain bikers, that's our cover slide, that's Moon Rocks. These are all properties that people really identify with a community. And being able to find those properties and bring permanent protection to them is a big part of our mission. So our conservation projects, mostly we want to emphasize that recreation and conservation can coexist. Recreation planning is site specific. We manage recreation through a stewardship and conservation lens where we are trying to balance a lot of these different conservation values. This is a great photo at Jenkinsburg below the bridge, where we've got we're serving takeout primarily as a takeout for the whitewater folks, people that are on kayaks and rafting and a variety of things just below the Cheat Canyon. So we develop, community and recreation plans. We do look to provide commercial and public and private recreational access. We connect to rail trails wherever we can, especially in Morgantown. We've helped to create spur trails from neighborhoods that go down to meet the Mon River Rail Trail. We've expanded public lands. We've acquired properties that are adjacent to or in holdings within National Park, National Forest, and Fish and Wildlife Service. 27 drinking water protection areas are in our portfolio. So these are properties that are forested, which will filter rainwater, and by virtue of our ownership, will not be developed for chemical tanks or anything streamside that shouldn't go in. 27 drinking water protection areas are under our purview, benefiting then providing cleaner water at the intakes in municipalities that are downstream. You can see the others, 465 miles of rivers and streams, a variety of other things that we do protect. So we've got a big range, and we really like to think, what can a piece of land do? Protecting land, which is the first step, then can have all these other development opportunities that include all of those conservation values that we've mentioned. Land trusts in other parts of the U.S. also are involved in affordable housing, looking at setting aside housing that can provide support for the development of workforce housing or attainable housing. And any number of, and some work with education systems to create preserves near schools. There's just a whole lot you can do, but the first thing you need to do is protect that land.
Yeah, I would just add that it's you probably have heard some of these stacked benefits and people talking about land protects drinking water, but it's a real thing. There's literature out there, there's studies that back this up. And so if you're in your community and you're trying to protect a piece of land and all these angles that we're talking about, these stacked benefits, maybe you won't get a bite on the recreation piece, but maybe you'll get a bite on the drinking water quality protection, or maybe you'll get a bite on the historical aspect of it, historic tourism. So what's fun at Piney Creek, which I think Piney Creek's a slide coming up, is that working on that project, relatively recreation focused, but we discovered the history. There's a lot of history on that property, so you're like starting to add all these things together. So you got Corey and others and Mitch and others at Beckley have really helped us develop that property. But you've got a multi-use trailhead that's being used by mountain bikers, and you go to that trailhead and you have this history right there too. You have this historical kiosk there. So it's pretty cool that you get the opportunity to spread all those messages in one place.
So conservation is an economic catalyst. I mean, a lot of us, maybe many of you on this call, were at the Outdoor Economy Summit in Charleston earlier this year, and that's a really great gathering that really brought people together to talk about what are the economic benefits that come with the recreation economy. Again, that recreation economy really begins with the land. We see land, the mountains, rivers, forests, public access points, as economic assets. We think that now, as the West Virginia economy shifts away from such a strong focus on extraction to something that is longer term and sustainable, that fundamental natural asset that is out there, the land, is something to be protected on which economic development can be built. And so we are supporting those recreation economies that many communities are clamoring to have. It's been interesting to see what what momentum there is with communities contacting us or any number of other agencies saying, we want to have trails. We want to have a place we can get to. And it's kind of ironic that for so many years, West Virginia, with all of its vast forests and undeveloped lands, didn't have ways of getting people to the outdoors because there was corporate ownership or there were barriers in the way that roads were designed. And we're looking at unlocking a lot of that opportunity so that communities have a quality of life, but that quality of life will bring other people and other investments to those communities. So, in addition to the recreation businesses for hiking and biking and fishing and hunting and climbing, um, and improvement in property values and support for workforces, those ecosystem services that come from protecting land also have economic benefits because by protecting forests, we reduce runoff and erosion that may cause increased water treatment costs. And with protecting stream corridors, we can regulate stream temperatures that allow sport fish to thrive. I mean, it's just so much that goes with protecting these natural assets. And that's where we think the state is going. And this is a great moment for us to continue to expand that portfolio of protected lands statewide.
Yeah, I would add that on the drinking water part, yeah, at the per acre, when you look at the per acre savings, you say, oh, that's not so much. I think it's a couple $100 right on the per acre. But when you scale up to 100 acres, you're looking at like $50,000 of saved drinking water treatment costs. And then when you scale up to the watershed level, there's examples in Portland, Oregon. There's examples in New York where they're saving billions of dollars in water infrastructure, water treatment costs because they're investing in land. They're investing in land protection, and then they can also offer recreation as well. Although Portland, Oregon is not real friendly in the Bull Run watershed, but that's okay.
So we see conserved lands as infrastructure. It again, these are the physical spaces on which many good things can be developed as long as that development is somewhat constrained, without, too many impervious surfaces and without industrial development streamside or along riversides. So that's the physical framework that recreation systems are based on. We also are really interested in connected landscapes, not just isolated parcels. So some of our properties do connect to public lands or they create access to public lands. We recently conserved what we call the gateway to Sanstonia Preserve uh, in Fayetteville. And Sanstonia is a climbing site in the New River Gorge National Park and Preserve. But public access to that site was not secured. And this was one of the situations where people were being allowed to use it by a landowner who was looking the other way. But there came to be controversies about how many people were using it and how many people were going across the property. Ultimately, we acquired that property. It's only 40 acres, but it's an important link where we've put in parking and signage so that people can have access from a public road onto our property and then onto trails that will get them onto the National Park Service land. National Park Service was happy to have a new access point that is legal and controlled and safe. We designed it properly. We worked with an adjacent property owner because we needed to have a trail. For the best trail, we really needed to go across a portion of their property. They granted us a right of way in order to build that trail and ultimately get to the Sanstonia Cliffs, which are a great climbing area. And so this is where, again, we looked at how do we get that connectivity to happen? And that's the Sanstonia Preserve really is doing that in spades, where we've created a new gateway onto the public land, and that corridor is really important for the success of the park and to disperse some of the heavy duty visitation that has happened since it was renamed as a national park. And so we've got this and a couple of other smaller gateways onto National Park Service lands in Fayetteville and also in Summers County.
Hey, Corey, we're till 11:45, right? So we have about 10 minutes. Okay, so we're going to go to some examples of our preserves. Before I switch the slide, I would just add that like the practical pointer view is to engage if you're working with a local municipality, local government, state government, whoever it may be, to engage them early. We'll go to Needleseye here. Needleseye when we talk about Needleseye, that was a good example. I see Corey and Jess here on this call. Beckley, I don't know if Mitch is on here, but engaging with Beckley early really helps things. So I would just recommend you engage as early as you can um, to build support and get those partners and all the projects that Brent talked about. We have a lot of nonprofit partners that really help us out a lot throughout the state to manage our properties. So here we are at Yellow Creek.
Yeah, and this is where locals came to us and said, "We've had trails there. We've been mountain biking for years. People hike, and now the owner is selling off parcels in 25-acre tracts, and because they need to raise money, and we'd love to see it protected." We talked to the landowner. They wanted to see it protected too, but they didn't know how it was going to happen. We did a variety of fundraising efforts in order to pull in about $800,000 to acquire the property and get signage and put it in place so it's a workable preserve. And now it connects to other state and federal lands in Canaan Valley. But it was in response to a request from the community that we did that. And now the Heart of the Highlands Trail System and Blackwater Bikes Association are both helping to design, build, maintain, and manage the property in partnership with us. This property protects the drinking water for the town of Davis. It protects unique habitats and also serves those recreation targets that the local community initially came to us talking about. So really proud of this one. We just love it. Worth a visit.
Yeah, that was a good one. And in the landscape scale, when you look at this one, it connects to state property, it connects to other federal properties. So when you look at connectivity, this property links into 1 million+ acres of the Mon National Forest, Canaan Valley National Wildlife Refuge, Little Canaan Wildlife Management Area. So it's like it just becomes part of that complex.
Oh.
Here's
I'm,
here's
Go
Needleseye.
ahead.
I just want to make a note on the map real quick, Brent. I put this map here just to sort of show the scale and the connectivity and the proximity of this property to Oak Hill. And just, you can almost just look at the map and say like, oh yeah, protecting that land for this community sure does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I mentioned a little bit ago just that we did this again at the request of the city of Oak Hill to create a boulder park. But then we transferred it to them with those restrictions that are in the conservation easement, and they've really made the most out of it. I got to say, even if you're not a climber, a hike along that trail to look at this rock wall that is there, it is a dramatic and awe-inspiring feature of the landscape. And I am so proud that we were able to set it aside because if you need a mental health shot of good vibes, you go for a hike there and you suddenly start to feel like a very small part of something much bigger. It's an absolutely gorgeous place. It was also important for Oak Hill, which saw itself sometimes as the forgotten sibling next to Fayetteville, which had been developing a whole lot of its recreation resources, and Oak Hill didn't have a whole lot. Well, now they've got mountain bike trails, they've got the climbing sites, they have a disc golf course. There's a whole lot that they are making out of this preserve at Needleseye. It's really fun to see, and it gives visitors to the New River Gorge National Park and Preserve more to do. People, now are looking at having longer stays in the national park area because there is more to do than there was before. Used to be they'd come in for a day or two, raft the rivers, say goodbye. But with the development of new amenities in the area, they're staying longer, spending more money, supporting those communities. It's a real win-win-win all around by virtue of having this protected amenity in the community.
And this one was the initiator here was the city manager.
Yeah.
So this was a municipal sort of minded project.
Yeah, yeah, and I should say too that some of it was a little bit beat up. There has been some mining on the property, and it had been owned by a timber company that had done some logging. Not they hadn't denuded it, but it just needs time to really grow back. But it's in pretty good shape. It's a really beautiful place to go. Adam, do you want to talk about
Yeah,
Moulton Park
yeah,
and
I'm looking at our timeline. I'll
yeah,
jump through this real quick. This is over in Jefferson County. So Jefferson County over in the Eastern Panhandle, one of the fastest. It competes with Berkeley County often as the fastest growing county. I think you guys have an Ascend program over there, WVU. Um, this was a private donor who was willing to donate. Brent, was this a full donation to the county?
yes,
Yeah, so there was a private donor that was willing to donate their land to the county parks entity to manage it as a park. It was originally a 3 acre park along the Shenandoah River, and they had horrid, if you've ever been over the Shenandoah in the summer, they got horrid access issues. It's crowded, it's DC Metro, it's very crowded. And so this basically added another 82 acres to this property. We put it under a conservation easement, it's permanently protected. And the uphill side, we solved some of the river access issues because they're allowed to put a parking lot there now for the public. Um, so it was really resolving an access issue, and it expanded the opportunity for Jefferson County Parks to put in trails, put in a disc golf course, and it's just a really pretty site.
Yeah. Adam, I'm wondering if there was a bargain sale component to this with an OHCF grant.
There may have been, Brent.
Yeah, I think so. But again, that's also an option. Is sometimes a landowner will say, "Well, I can't afford to donate the whole thing, but I will donate a partial. I'll donate a portion of it if you can pay me for a portion of its appraised value." We work with appraisers. We determine the fair market value of property, and then we can decide whether or not we're going to buy it. But sometimes a landowner will say, "Just give me a portion of what it's worth." So that I can walk away with something to share with the other heirs to the property or whatever. And so we work with a lot of family dynamics in cases like this too, which always are interesting and ultimately rewarding.
Yeah. There's Piney Creek. You guys know some of those people probably.
There's Corey.
Brent, you want to hit this one?
Well, sure. Piney Creek Preserve came to the West Virginia Land Trust as a result of a lawsuit that was brought against coal companies that had violated the Federal Clean Water Act. We were not a party to the lawsuit, but the environmental organizations that brought that lawsuit said, we want to offset the damage that the coal companies have done, and we want to dedicate some. We think that as part of the settlement with the coal company, this portion of land should be given up and turned into a conservation site. And it came to the West Virginia Land Trust. And so we were in fact sort of surprised suddenly when we received 613 acres out of the blue that we hadn't been negotiating for. Then we had to learn, what do you do with the land now, and what are the opportunities, and what are the constraints, and what are some of the challenges for managing it. We've had a great partner with City of Beckley, and this is part of the Beckley Outdoors Plan, to develop Beckley into a major recreational asset. It also is one of those gateways to the New River Gorge National Park and Preserve network of trails. It positions Beckley really well for the national park. And the vision is, 20 miles of trails and future connectivity to the national park. It's also part of the West Virginia Waterfall Trail already. And we've got different portions of the preserve that are under construction and under development that include hiking and mountain biking. It's going to grow over time. And OEDC has been a partner in a lot of that development too. Again, this is where we are just looking at what can this property offer. And what it offers is it really makes Beckley into a recreation destination in its own right. And ultimately, we hope to be able to connect that corridor up to the national park lands. So again, that gateway function that really expands that corridor and makes conservation more available for recreation as well as water protection, to many, many people. So we're really pleased with the public access component that Piney Creek Preserve brings.
I think that's it, Corey. We
All right. Thanks so much, y'all. It's getting this like snapshot to reflect back on all the work, incredible work that you all have done is just like so monumentous. I mean, there's some really big numbers in there. So, we have a few minutes here at the end that we can open it up for questions for folks in the chat. Feel free to come off mute and ask a question if you have one. One question that I would like to bring up to kind of kick it off really quick is you mentioned a little bit of this earlier, but could you elaborate on the tax incentive that is the difference between like the federal and the state, and in West Virginia, we don't have that tax incentive? And are there any other states that you know of that have really good like benchmarked incentives
Yeah.
that we could look towards? Like, or is there any policy, I guess, in general on the
Yeah.
state level that could help conservation?
I'd love to see this one change. West Virginia is one of the very few, just a handful of states nationwide that doesn't offer any kind of a tax deduction for charitable contributions. Most states do. If you make a contribution to an organization, you can deduct some portion of that on your taxes at the end of the year within those states. And I think West Virginia is one of maybe six states nationwide that doesn't have that. If we had that, policy in the state that said if somebody wants to make a contribution and do something good, donate to a nonprofit organization, they can get an economic benefit from that. It would go a long way towards strengthening the nonprofit community and the good works that come from all of these 501(c)(3) organizations. West Virginia's nonprofit structure is a little bit weak, partially because funding is constrained. We're in a philanthropy constrained state, but if people were able to get some benefit on their taxes from making charitable contributions, it could go a long way towards supporting organizations that work in recreation, conservation, healthcare, education, any number of other things that nonprofits do. The federal tax incentive is one that is a special part of the IRS code, and for donors who contribute conservation easements, the value of that easement can be deducted from taxes over a 15-year period. So rather than it just being a one shot, take a deduction this year, sometimes those easements have a lot of value and landowners can spread that contribution out over a 15-year period to reduce their tax burden for a good long time. So that is in place, and West Virginia, is subject to those federal guidelines too. But at the state level, that policy of having a charitable tax deduction would be a really great thing to initiate.
Thanks for that answer. I really appreciate that. Any others on the call that have a question?
Chime in. I do have a question. You talked a lot about the purchase of private land and then protecting it. What about land that is already currently public and adding protections to that don't currently exist?
Uh, I'll take a stab at this one. We uh, we don't really have the ability to we will one role that we play is we will be sometimes like the federal and state, well, the federal government mainly can't act fast enough maybe to get a priority parcel, right? I'm going to skirt around your answer a little bit and then I'll come back. We are able to act a little bit quicker. We can sometimes grab a property quick and hold it until it can come into the national park system or the federal land system. That's one way that we work with already public lands. I'm not um, uh, when we the federal government and state government, they just kind of say, hey, we're going to protect this permanently, and they often won't take a land, or they don't want a land if it has an easement on it or the easement gets extinguished. So there's some constraints that we don't really have an ability to add anything on top of
Right.
public lands protections. Brent, do you have any?
What about like on the local, municipal, or county level?
um, that's a well, I mean, the Needle's Eye example, that's a good example, right? So we could Needle's Eye is a good example where we transferred the property to Oak Hill and we placed a conservation easement on it. So yeah, I appreciate that clarity. We can place a easement on it at that local municipal level if that local government is willing to accept it with the easement because it creates restrictions. Um, the federal government in particular doesn't seem to want to take a property that has an easement on it. They want to be able to manage it under their guidelines. But yeah, at the local level, Needle's Eye is a good example where we're able to place
Yeah.
that added protection on it. And the funding source through the Outdoor Heritage Conservation Fund, if the transaction involves the Outdoor Heritage Conservation Fund, there is an additional protection there that if it ever goes out of recreation use or conservation use, that it would revert to the state. Um, so I think the easement example at the local level is probably the best way
Yeah.
that you could
I,
add protections.
Yeah, I think the other way that we do influence some of the federal lands is through an augmentation, maybe, of what they're already doing. So in Summers County, near the near the towns, near the greater metropolitan areas of Nimitz and Jumping Branch, which I'm sure a lot of you have been through. Each of them has a post office. We acquired a variety of parcels from two families and with support from the USDA Community Forest Program, we created the Little Bluestone Community Forest. It's about 300 acres. It's really beautiful along the Little Bluestone River. But the leverage that we ended up with is that there's an old carriage trail that goes through that property that connects to and abuts National Park Service lands at the National Bluestone Scenic River property. And we went to the National Park Service and said, hey, we're your neighbors and we're going to develop access onto this property at the Little Bluestone Community Forest. Would we be able to develop the trail that goes onto the National Park Service lands to give people another gateway into that complex of federal properties? And again, this is adding another attraction, adding another point of entry onto those Park Service lands, and Bluestone ultimately connects to New River Gorge too. So Summers County gets a gateway, National Park Service gets another entry point, and we are supporting local recreation economies at the same time. So that's where we sort of we say we've got something adjacent to your property. This could be a really good entry point for more people, and they said, bring it on.
And we've transferred a number of properties into the either Forest Service or National Park Service at this point. We had land right there at Carnifax Ferry at the mouth of the meadow that we were able to protect about 6 miles along the gully.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Any other questions from the group?
I have one.
Go ahead, Heidi.
Hi, Brent. Good to
Hi,
see
Heidi.
you again. Great job, by the way. I learned a lot as always, and it's great to see you. Hey, I was just thinking, I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but as you're talking about charitable giving and kind of, the constraints within West Virginia and what's available federally, have you guys ever heard of or worked with a program called freewill.com?
We have referred people to that
Okay.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that, West Virginians love their land and they may be land rich and cash poor, but upon their passing, if they want to be sure that their land is going to be protected, they can plunk us into their will. The catch for us is that we really hope that people talk to us ahead of time before they go. First, so that we can thank them, but also so that we can take a look at the property because we have, in a couple of cases, received a property in a will that we did not know was coming to us, and the board of directors decided not to accept it. Because there were some problems with access to the property, or there was some not a clear title to the property. There was just a lot that we would have preferred to say to the landowner before they put it into their will, this won't meet our criteria. So it's not a slam dunk when something comes to us that we are going to take it or add it to our protected lands because it needs to have those stacked benefits. But free will is a really great tool for people to use because identifying a piece of property to put into your will to go to a land trust isn't complicated wording. And it's pretty good stuff. So yeah, we've passed people toward free will sometimes, especially if they decide that they do not want to hire an attorney of their own. So they will use that.
Yeah, and my understanding, and again, I don't know, Brent, I just know enough to be dangerous on this, but I think if you guys set up a partnership with them, there's a way that you can add your name as one of the charities that folks
Mm,
can check. So they don't that you could just get stocks or
yeah.
money, literally. So it
Huh.
might be worthy of setting up a call with them and
Yeah.
see
Okay.
if,
Thanks. That's a
yeah,
great idea.
just would like to have you. I love the work you guys are doing, and you've impacted my life for sure. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Glad to hear it. It's
Yeah,
what we're here for.
our contacts up there. Just real quick, that picture that you're looking at is Greenville Saltpeter Cave in Monroe County. Stacked benefits. We're protecting critical bat habitat. We're going to have some recreation trails there. Or is it Monroe? Yes, Monroe County. Give us another 2 to 3-ish years. We got to find some funding, but this is a really beautiful property with stacked benefits and
Yep.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, Brent,
And
Adam,
historic value too, Adam.
Historic value. Yep.
That's really incredible. So the river flows through this cave on this photo here.
Yeah, it goes into the cave system. Right inside there, there's a big back gate. Um, and in fact, New River, some of the New River commercial outfitters used to just, this was a private property. They just used to drive up there and take people caving.
Yeah.
Never really had permission, but
One of those things.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, hey, y'all, thanks so much for being on the webinar and for sharing your expertise. I really enjoyed having you all and learning more about what you all do. And thanks so much. And we look forward to supporting your work in the future.
yeah. Thanks for
Thanks.
what you do too. Appreciate it.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. See you on the next
You
webinar.
guys, take
Take
care.
care.